We work hard as physicians to take care of the health and well-being of our patients. But when it comes to our money, do we have the same condition of care? Probably not. Let's change that together. Welcome to the Financial Freedom for Physicians podcast, where we'll fight and advocate for your financial literacy. As always, I'm your host, Dr. Christopher Liu. Thanks for being here. Let's jump into the show. Hey guys, I want to welcome you guys to the Financial Freedom for Physicians podcast. We've got a great episode this week. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button as well as the notifications bell, and be sure to like, comment, and share if you like this episode. And we'll get into this week's sponsor and show. This week's episode is sponsored by CityVest. CityVest has quickly become the most popular and best way for doctors to invest in top-performing real estate private equity funds that are usually reserved for institutional investors. This unique access to investing in these institutional funds is available for the first time ever through CityVest's easy and secure online investment platform. CityVest does the hard work of conducting due diligence and vetting the investments. They even get a third-party due diligence report that is posted on their website. As a result of aggregating a several $million investment amount into their access funds, CityVest gains access to investing in the institutional investment and is able to negotiate better investment terms such as a 12% preferred return. You can check them out at cityvest.com or go to the link in the show notes below. Now on to the show. So welcome everybody to this week's podcast episode for the Financial Freedom for Physicians podcast. And I'm your host, Dr. Christopher Liu. And we have a weekly show where we bring on physician entrepreneurs, investors, people on the cutting edge doing things we imagined impossible. So today we have a guest, Dr. Dewan Farhana. She is the founder and CEO of Dr. Finances, and she's going to talk to us all about her journey and how she came to be. So welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Chris. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to be here.
I know we were just talking backstage a little bit, and we both had spoken at White Coat Investors, and and we had connected and just talked through email and internet and just networked. So I'm glad to get you on the show. I'm trying to get the word out and the brand out and awareness out. So I know you do all things finances. I know you're interested in startups. You've written quite a number of books and you've spoken. So tell us how you got started and we'll go from there.
Sure. So I can start a little bit with my sort of medical journey. So I did my undergrad at Rutgers. I was set to becoming a clinical physician my whole life. I imagined being the chair of the physical medicine rehab department at some top hospital. But while I was in my journey, I've kind of always been like a founder at heart. I've always been interested in doing working with different organizations and things like that. So while I was in the last year of medical school, one of the things I noticed is that there was a lot of these technology products that we were using that were just like having a huge impact. And this was something that people were using around the world, like millions of people. And I was really curious about it, like Dropbox and Evernote and things like that. And so I started learning a lot about startups. I know my spouse at that time was already immersed in the technology industry. He previously had one of his startups acquired. So I was starting to get a little bit curious. I didn't know anything about startups, how it works, what it means by technology. Meaning, I've always heard about business school. There's such thing as business. And I've heard about technology, but now it was like a mix of like combining technology with business and doing it at scale. And so through my research, what I've learned is that, the way the startups are working is that you're basically leveraging software to reach millions of people within milliseconds. And so I was reading articles like by Mark Andreessen. He's one of the top VC investors here. And he was saying how software is eating the world. Eventually, every single company is going to be a technology and software company. And so after fourth year, I matched into residency. And then but at the same time, I had the opportunity to move here to Silicon Valley and work on a startup startup. I had found a great founder. And so I just decided to take that opportunity because it was something that I thought about all the time. And I'm very much a person who, whenever I see a great opportunity, I go for it. I try not to let things like, structural reasons or, family reasons stop me. So if I see like a really good opportunity, I'll go for it. And so I decided to move here. On a personal side, my husband was already living here for about 3 years. So we were doing long distance for 3 years. And so if I continued with PM&R residency and training, that would be another 7 years of long distance. Then he would have to move back. And he had a great opportunity at his job and he was moving up quickly in his current position. And we want to start a family. So it just made a lot of sense for me to move here and work on the startup. So I did that. I was the founder and CEO of Betternest. And what we did is we connected professional home organizers to people who really needed it. So people with disability, different illnesses, even small businesses to help them get digitally organized. It's a $27 billion industry. And, we built that platform out as a marketplace. And while I was working on the startup, I started discovering robo-advisors because these were other startups that were disrupting the financial industry. And basically, I learned about Wealthfront and Betterment and what, that you can just invest in something called low-cost index funds. And you have this thing called compound interest, apparently, that I've never heard of. And you can have your money for you while you eat, sleep, and shower and stuff. And so I was like, wait, what is this? And so previously, when I've heard of different like financial advice, I was like, no, this is a scam. Because like, if it was something important, someone would have told me. I mean, hello, like I've been involved in organizations my whole life. I have some great mentors. Everyone around me is so smart. I've worked with some top-notch surgeons. Someone would have said something as amazing as this. No one ever did. But I took it seriously this time because these were other full startups, well-funded startups working on this idea. And that they were saying that, most financial advisors can't, figure out like what's going to happen in the market. And that if you just follow the market index and you invest for the long term, you can grow your wealth. So I told my husband about it and he was like, no, I don't know. Cause he wasn't even contributing to his 401k. And so I asked my sister about it, my older sister who's always been smart. She's a board certified rheumatologist. And she said, I've never heard of it. So my brother-in-law who works in Wall Street, he said, I haven't heard of this. So I was like, okay. So we did a lot of research and then we realized, oh my goodness, like there's this whole subject of personal finance and compound interest and how you can reach financial independence. And there's actually a Trinity study that was done and you can actually invest and reach financial independence that way. So as soon as we found out about that, we just went all in. Like we were the type, like we just didn't know this concept. I always say it was like I found the answer to like an exam. That's what it felt like to me. And so we just went all in. Like we just like contributed to every single account you could think of, 401ks, solo 401ks, HSAs, Roth IRAs, backdoor Roth, 529s, front loaded our kids, 529s and stuff. And so as a result, and we were fortunate that we both had the way we built wealth is basically just high income. Like we were high income earners and we just contributed to low cost index funds. So it wasn't anything fancy. It wasn't like we did it through crypto or, or real estate or anything. We mainly did it with low cost index funds. And by having the market, help us fight inflation as well as grow our wealth consistently, we reached financial independence in early 2020. And as a result, I transitioned out of the startup to focus on a couple of things. One is I have two little ones, so my 5-year-old and 1-year-old. And then also there were a lot of physicians reaching out to me because they wanted, more information on how they can transition from clinical medicine into tech. Because previously it was like, if you left clinical medicine, it was like a big deal, like what is going on, But now because of everything that has happened, which Chris, you and I couldn't predict. Now, it's like, oh, you guys are like pioneers, but really, like, I'm sure previously we were seen as like weirdos that were like, moving out of clinical medicine. But, I kind of always knew that I could go back to clinical medicine, So for me, it wasn't like, fortunately, it wasn't like burnout or anything like that. It was just like, look, here's a really great opportunity. You have this co-founder, you have this, opportunity to build this great startup. Like, do you go for it or do you, and I knew that, and I'm a DO as well. So I know that there were like definitely family medicine spots, especially in certain areas that are always available for DOs. So I was like, look, I can always like do family medicine, which I always loved. I loved all aspects of medicine. Ultimately, I like PM&R. And so that's what I did. And so I did, I do consultations for physicians. And then I started teaching personal finance online because I was like, wow, other people need to know this information. So I started posting, I think it was back in 2016, 2017, about this information, disability insurance and stuff. And then now I'm recently doing a fellowship on venture capital because I'm interested in potentially joining a venture capital firm in the near future. And so that's where I am.
That's an amazing story, and I think we have so many similar paths because my path was in 2008, and I was in it was an orthopedic residency, and there's the 2008 crash, and there was just all these markets on sale. So, and I came across this really interesting decision making way of looking at things that was coined by Jeff Bezos. And he was like, if you have a fork in the road, you want to go when you're 80 and look backwards and see would making this decision or not making this decision leave you with regret. So, and it's a very fascinating way to think about things. And that's sort of the way I think about things now. And it's like, 2008, and then of course, your decision. So, these takes a lot of courage, and there's so many resonating, and I'm fascinated with the tech space. I'm involved with these entrepreneurs and NFTs, DAOs, Web3, metaverse. So that's like where my focus is now. But it's so awesome to see physicians, forward-thinking physicians thinking about where we're headed into the next 20 years. Where are we going to be? Really breaking outside of these traditional modes of thinking. So, So tell us about your startup, and it's exciting. I want all my audience and listeners to know more about you and about what you're doing.
Yeah. One of the big questions I get is like how, one is, how can they do what I did? And also more importantly, like how can people join the tech industry? And, I think it's so important that physicians to be aware that they can join the tech industry because there's so much opportunities here. I was talking to a couple of the women that are going to attend the ACE conference. And what I was saying is, there's a lot of great options, but real estate is not the only option. There's options in pharmaceutical industry. There's options in tech industry. The pay in tech is also great. And in tech, you get paid for the value and talent you bring. So how like in medicine, if you're like the top-notch Harvard, neurosurgeon, there's like a cap of how much you can make. And especially if you go to a rural hospital, you may get paid less. But just because you're the top Harvard neurosurgeon does not mean that you're going to get the highest pay. But in tech, if you're like the top machine learning expert, you're making millions. So that's sort of like the value and the talent you bring is reflective of how much you get paid. And physicians are really well positioned to get paid well here as long as you know how to negotiate, your worth, the value that you're bringing, because everyone has a lot of talent, right? Like everyone in medicine is basically a superstar because they've worked so hard to, get to that place. And so the approach that I took is I was a founder. So in a sense, I did it the hardest way, where basically I built a startup from the ground up. And to do that, you need a really great idea, but more importantly, you need the execution and you need a bulletproof founding team. The statistics itself is hard. So 90% of startups fail. Most VC firms are not profitable. These are things that are really important to understand. And when you're also founding a startup, you should understand, like, do you need venture capital money? Because venture capital money has its own, things that you have to be aware of. And so basically you're using this money to usually the idea is that you're disrupting an industry, like Uber disrupting the taxi cab industry, or Airbnb disrupting the hospitality industry. And you use VC money to grow exponentially, often overtaking growth over profit, and so you're using that money. And basically what VCs want is that they want that money back in 10 years that they would take longer to get back, say, in the stock market over, say, 40 years or so. And so you can join as a founder. build a startup from the ground up. You have a great team. You have to raise funding. You grow. You hire employees. You make money. You give yourself a salary. And then the way you get an exit is either you get acquired or you IPO at the stock market. The other option is you can join as like a medical founder. You can join as like a founding partner, like medical founder, board member. Those are also other great options. And that's the way a lot of physicians join. So if you're interested, you can network with different startups, you can join groups, you can join accelerator programs and start contributing to some of your knowledge and information, get to meet other founders. And, you can present them with the idea like, hey, I would be interested in joining as a medical founder and so on, or be invited as a board member. And then the other way to join is to fund, right? You can be an angel investor or a VC, and you can fund startups. So that way you don't have to do any of the physical work, but you fund the companies. And that in itself is also a bit of a full-time job in itself, because, what people don't realize is that most angel investors actually don't make money because the way the statistics work is that 10% of these startups end up being successful. And that's what we see in the news all the time. But the other 90% quietly go into the dark, So as an angel investor, you have to be able to figure out that 10%. As a founder, you have to be able to build that company that's within the 10%. As a board member, you have to join that company, or a medical founder or a regular employee to join that company. But it's really important to understand is that a lot of people think that if I found an entire company by myself, maybe that's how I'll have the most impact and how we'll make the most money because I have the most equity. But keep in mind, if you have a company that's not worth a lot and you have 100% equity, it means nothing. But if you have 1% equity of Facebook, you're basically a billionaire. So, it's kind of like if you have a great idea and your company is, say, valued at 200 million and you have 10% equity, you will still walk away with someone who is an employee at one of these fast growing companies like, Facebook and Airbnb and things like that. So, and you can still have the same impact. Think about it. The impact, now you're part of a large organization, you have an entire team, you have everything set up. So in a sense, you can have a much bigger impact than trying to build something from the ground up. But, it's all possible. You have to go with what your gut is telling you and what works and where you are in life. But what I always say is, always understand your personal finance first, because when you do, that's when you can make big decisions. In fact, my spouse, he had a really good opportunity to join a startup 2 years ago. And so we did all the math and we ran all the numbers, and we realized that it's better for him to stay at his corporate job right now at one of the tech companies than go and take this huge risk and work on a startup from the ground up. Because if you look at the returns and the market and the salary and the equity and how much you'd get back, you're able to make that decision. So that's a really hard and tough decision to make because, even if it's a well-funded startup, but if you don't understand your own personal finance, it's hard to make these decisions. So a simple calculator and a simple Excel sheet will change your life. And so as long as you understand that, you can make almost any decisions on what company you should join and so on.
That's awesome advice. I got done coaching this couple, and really they did the 20% savings plan and they're figuring out what to do. And, a lot of physicians, they're trying to get into these startups and IPOs and all of these things, and they don't have their finances, they don't understand basics. So that, that's, high risk. Right. So, you brought up a couple interesting points, especially in the VC angel investing, the startup space, it's all about networks. So what are some ways that physicians can join? What are some networks, and how are ways that physicians can join these startup networks?
Yeah. So first things first, you want to make sure that you're subscribed to all of these amazing technology magazines. So, anything from Recode, TechCrunch, Wirecutter, the Wirecutter is more New York Times and so any of these really VentureBeat, that's another good one. You want to make sure that you're subscribed to those. Any new startup, you're going to see it mentioned in Angel List or F6S. Or the pitch book, you can see how much, what startups are available. You can also check its funding and the level in TechCrunch or PitchBook as well. And then the best way really is just get immersed into the ecosystem. So whichever way, wherever you are in the closest proximity. So there are colleges and universities, perhaps even medical schools that have accelerator programs, incubator programs. The best known incubator program here is called Y Combinator. They gave rise rise to like, a Dropbox and Airbnb and Stripe and things like that. And even then, remember, all of the companies that they invest, not 100% of them end up being successful, a very small amount. But you're going to obviously hear about all the top startups. So getting into the network, and start with, from a perspective of like learning and understanding, start understanding some of the language, understand like what is the rate of success. Like a lot of people, they think that everyone is becoming a billionaire here, and that's not true. It's understanding. It's really, a lot of it's also luck. That's one thing that I definitely learned. Like I thought, if you work hard and you have a good idea, like you will be successful. That's kind of how it works in medicine, right? Like if you work really hard and you're pretty smart, like you will get through. But that's not the case in startups because there's so many other factors that play into this. So for example, DoorDash was struggling right before the pandemic, and they really skyrocketed after the pandemic happened versus a lot of the co-working spaces like WeWork and some of like the women-led co-working spaces, they all crashed. So you never know. Sometimes everything is out of your control. So you just never know like what is going to work and what's not. You just do the best you can. And there's, a lot of factors that go into it. So networking and understanding, like, what is it that you love? How can you contribute? What's a good team that you can join? You want to make sure that the startup is funded. You want to make sure that it's in the right trajectory. Like, make sure about all of those things. Don't be afraid to ask questions. And so just get into the network and start getting on the listserv, and then once you're ready, the best way to approach a founder or to join a team is to get a warm introduction if possible. So you say, say someone knows me and I say, hey, I know Chris, he's really great. And, I introduce you, and then you'll get a much better response than cold emails. But remember, for especially VC and even many of the founders, like their job is to also read these emails, right? Like as a founder, you're hiring all the time. So you really should be reading. So any cold email that you send is okay too, because sometimes you don't have a network, and I know what it's like, especially for women, minorities, underrepresented groups that get so little funding. Like sometimes, the best form for them is to do cold emails, and that works too. So do whatever works. If you have a passion for it, go for it. And of course, know your worth. Remember to ask for equity, how much equity, what it means, like how it vests, like how long does it last? What if you leave the company? Like these are all important questions to ask. So basically start reading. Start looking at some of these groups like AngelList and, Crunchbase of all the different companies, and then start to get to know founders and then send them an email or connect with them via Twitter and try to get an interview and go from there.
That's awesome. Yeah. And one thing is, with you living in the Valley, are you seeing, so for example, the traditional way was you get, you went through an IPO, but, recently a lot of companies like Coinbase, they did a direct listing, they didn't, or via SPACs, we can talk about the advantages and disadvantages of SPACs, but are you seeing companies raise money through tokenization? Because I know, some crypto companies, blockchain companies, now they issue tokens, so they don't really have to go through this other, and now some, artists and creators are minting NFTs to generate funding. Are you seeing any of that in the Valley?
Yeah, we're definitely seeing a lot of SPACs, which, there's controversies on all sides regarding that, and crypto and NFT spaces as well. The whole thing about the crypto and NFT space is, of course, is still all speculative. So when people ask me whether if you're getting your startup founded or whatever, make sure that you really understand it and, it makes sense for your industry. So like when it comes to, for example, personal finance, I always say, of course you can invest in crypto or whatever, but keep it less than 10% of your portfolio, work, because there's things like low cost index funds and ETFs that have worked historically and people have comfortably retired. And if you want to look into that, you can join the Boggleheads Forum for anyone that's not aware. And you can see how so many people have comfortably and happily retired early or during retirement around 67, 68. And they were able to do so comfortably. So this is something that that absolutely works. Now, this is something like crypto and stuff, it's becoming more mainstream. I was actually not I was not against it, but I was like not for it for a long time because it just was so speculative and, but because the adoption rate is so high now, I always say, so ultimately I did end up investing in crypto, very small percentage of my portfolio, but just understand that it's all speculative. Like you can't put all of your savings and worth and everything into that, even though a lot of bros here have. It's one of those like, do you do the try and true method or do you try to get rich quick kind of thing? Feel free to play around for less than 10% of your portfolio, but, please be careful and, stick to things that work, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Do your own research. Don't invest money you can't afford to lose.
Right.
Diversify. And so diversify. So some of my friends, they have 100%, like they're younger, like they're millennials. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So they have, they're 60%, some of them are 100%. They don't even worry about the stocks anymore.
Yeah, and be aware that everyone's not playing the same game. Like if you have parents that give you a huge safety net and you can go and like put 100%, you're young and you lose all that money, no problem, right? You can continue working. But if you're in your 40s and you don't understand this market, like be careful. And if, that's one thing I also learned as a founder, like, a lot of the things that's not covered in the news is like how much of a safety net and privilege a lot of these founders come from. Like, as we know, statistically, white male founders from Ivy League universities, Harvard, Stanford, they literally have like pipeline programs and, they get funded and, they have this huge safety net. Like even, Jeff Bezos, his parents gave him $200,000. Like a lot of us growing up, our parents didn't have $200,000 to just give us to build out Amazon, things like even, and even it's been hard for them. Even Bill Gates, like when he left, he went back to Harvard to study again. And then he came back out and they also had like VCs were like really reaching out to them and giving them money, literally throwing money saying, come and build this because we need someone, to build this out. So, so just be careful and understand that not everyone is playing the same game. Not everyone has the same level of privilege. So be confident who you are and what you can, your risk tolerance, and go from there. So, awesome. So be aware of that.
Awesome. On that note, I know a lot of people are interested. So, any courses, products, website? I know you're active on Instagram. So tell everybody how to contact you.
Sure. So you can find me on Instagram. I'm at Dr._finances. I post a lot of fun and visual content. Everyone loves my content. I love making it. I'm really passionate about personal finance because I feel like it honestly changed my life. Like if this didn't exist, like my life would be very different right now. But, I found out about how you can reach financial independence, about the Trinity study and things like that. And I have all that posted on my Instagram. So you can follow there. And I also have a course. I have a comprehensive personal finance course, everything you need to know, everything from mindset to, how to invest in low-cost index funds, to estate planning, to 529s for your children. And I have 2 bonus lectures, one on how you can join the tech industry, as well as cybersecurity for physicians, since I'm also really interested in cybersecurity and how to protect yourself and making sure that, you're not hacked online and what to do if you are. So all of that is on my Instagram, as well as my website, drfinances.com.
Awesome. So on that note, thanks so much. And we look forward to hearing about your progress in the future.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you so much, Chris. I really appreciate it.
What a fantastic show. I hope you enjoyed our very special guest. Just remember, as a shout out to our this week's sponsor, CityVest.com. CityVest gives you access to the best real estate private equity funds with enhanced investment terms, verified due diligence, and lower risk. You can check them out at cityvest.com or click on the link in the show notes below to hear about their upcoming investment offerings. I'm excited that you made it for another episode. You are truly the best. If you've been following the show for a while, you know that my passion is to bring you the education you need to find your path to financial freedom. Please come back week after week for new content, new resources, and great guests. Until then, if you haven't already, please be sure to check out the website, www.drchrislumdphd.com for more support. I'll see you next week.